When you step on grass, does it spring back up? This was the burning question one balmy morning in Mrs. Matheson's third grade class as we attempted to learn what the word resilience meant. We were tasked with one of those dreaded vocabulary assignments in which you had to write a definition, draw a picture, and use it in a sentence. And on top of that, we had to understand what these words meant. So I decided to keep it uncomplicated, streamlined. If the grass bounced back, we could call it resilient. Simple as that, resilience meant the act of bouncing back. I carried this definition of resilience with me as I grew older, like when I fell off my bike over and over again while learning to ride. If I got back on, that meant I was showing resilience. Or getting a bad grade, but picking my spirits back up to keep studying harder. Being resilient was binary. If I got back up, I was resilient. If I stayed down, I was not. My parents are Vietnamese refugees, and as I grew older and started to better recognize the nuances of my multicultural household, this complicated my definition of resilience. It was my job as the youngest of 3 daughters to uphold traditional values of perseverance, endurance, and tenacity in my work, studies, and how I interacted with the world. I felt like the person I was becoming was just a reflection of making my parents' sacrifices worthwhile. I think a lot of children in immigrant households that grew up in the US like me feel the need to straddle their cultural identity as well as their American lives. I wanted to be Vietnamese and American, and I felt like part of that meant not talking about difficult topics like mental health. I remember it distinctly. It was the night before my 18th birthday, senior year of high school, and my anxiety was starting to show physical symptoms. I felt like the heart beating out of my chest feeling, the long nights of unexplainable fear and worry were not just normal stress, and I brought it up to my mother. She told me, "Không lo con." In Vietnamese, that roughly translates to, "Don't worry, child." Không lo con, không có cái gì đâu. Don't worry, child. It isn't anything. Her words both comforted and panicked me. She made me feel like I could get over this phase of my life, but at the same time, it made me wonder if there was something wrong with me. If this anxiety persisted, if there was something to worry about, would I be failing what my family and what society expected of me? This moment made me question what I previously knew about resilience. Introducing a need to focus on my mental health put a snag in my previously simple concept of bouncing back. So I did what many of us do when we meet something unfamiliar. I put on a face, posted pictures on social media showing when I was only at my best, showed the world that I would be okay because that was what society expected of me. And I, like many people my age, was hiding the fact that I was experiencing hurt that was more than just growing pains. Now, I was a young adult. I was getting my first job, applying to college, figuring out what the future held for me. At the end of high school, I fell in love with someone in the way we do as teenagers. And the thing is, we fell in love at the same time that life was getting hard. While I was discovering I had anxiety and adjustment disorders, he was exploring his depression. And while I was experiencing anxiety attacks, he was experiencing suicidality. And amidst all of that, I started to conflate caring for him with love. For 3 years, I dedicated myself to this ideal that if I could help him be resilient, that I was resilient too by some transitive property. I lost myself in being a caretaker, and this too complicated my definition of resilience. When we were entering that stage in our lives, when we were learning how to take care of ourselves, I think we get ambitious and start to believe we can take care of other people too. It's just part of who we are. We want to be the person that's always there, that supports other people in their challenges. And resilience starts to apply not only to ourselves, but to the people around us too. It was difficult for me to differentiate when I was making appropriate sacrifices for my relationship versus when I was putting his well-being before my own. Breakups are hard, but breakups with anxiety and depression involved are even harder. You see, it wasn't until after he ended it that I finally saw that those 3 years were filled with too much putting his needs before mine and too much choosing his depression over my anxiety. I lost my constant, not just in a person, but how I gave this person everything I had and often held their personhood above my own. I didn't know how much of myself I had lost during the course of the relationship until I was on my own, realizing I didn't know who I was without it. It was then that I started to recognize I needed to pay greater attention to the skills I already had, but had selectively ignored. Now, as a second year at UCLA, I had been part of several mental health advocacy groups for over a year, including the Depression Grand Challenge and the Resilience Peer Network. While I had been a mentor for other students for some time, I forgot how important those lessons were for myself. During this period, I sunk into my hurting because I knew that prioritizing my own needs meant embracing what was difficult. And as hard as it was, I pushed myself to make more plans with friends, started to reconnect with people I lost track of, working out more seriously, and even going to seek on-campus mental health resources. From that time until now, I fell many times. I was stepped on, I was hurt, I felt pain. My experiences were belittled. I even had a therapist tell me once, "It sounds like your boyfriend's depression was much worse than your anxiety. Maybe you're not even anxious at all, and you're just trying to relate to him." And it wasn't always easy to open up, when it always felt like there was going to be someone that didn't believe me or support me, even a mental health professional. For me, resilience became all my previous definitions. It was the grass bouncing back. It was my traditional parents. It was supporting someone else. It was the depression and anxiety I was so close to. And like many of you, I was taught while growing up to be strong and to be brave when it came to adversity. We have this fear embedded in us that if we fail to be strong or brave, we are somehow the converse, weak or afraid. But that's the best part about resilience. Resilience celebrates the fact that even though you've been hurt, you grew from it. After my breakup, I felt like I joined this special group of people that told horror stories of encounters with their exes and learned how to brush them off, how to move on, and even maybe find love again. I realized that my hurting allowed me to join a network of people that shared in common experiences. And I decided a way to tackle my hurt was to join other networks and many networks built upon people that had common struggles. I delved deeper into my advocacy work and learned that even those that support others can develop skills to support themselves. My work with the DGC through the Resilience and Outreach peer networks showed me that resilience is twofold. Built upon the network we build with other people and the network we must continue to grow within ourselves. Networks are critical to how we build resilience and how we will get through the inevitable hurt that life throws at us. Leaning into the hurt, well, it hurts, but it is necessary for growth. It is necessary for us to build up the arsenal of skills and techniques that we will need when life tries to keep us down. We need to learn to celebrate resilience, like how we celebrate resilience in communities that survive war or political instability or natural disasters. And although our stories all result from different experiences, we all fight our own battles. Imagine a life in which we celebrated that we hurt and will hurt in different ways, but recognize that we will get through it together. The truth is, we will experience hurt that's so awful that one day we will reflect back on how we even got through it in the first place. Not getting over breakups or hardships, but rather getting through them. I'm sure that the future holds more challenges for us, that we will know more hurt, more anxiety, more growing pains than we ever thought possible. But I'm also sure that a life in which we as a community and network of people celebrate that our hurt will make us more resilient is a life I'm excited to live in. Thank you.